So it's mid-January, and January is the month in our Science of Mind world, in spiritual centers across the country, across the world, where this month we get back to basics. We get back to really teaching some core principles for science of mind. And we often do that by sharing from the first 4 chapters. They're actually part of the introduction. I call them the pre-chapters that are in this Science of Mind textbook. They're called The Thing Itself, The Way It Works, What It Does, and How to Use It. And typically we take 1 chapter each week and take that through the week. And that's, as I said, all month, this month, I've done that, been there, done that many times. Need to do it a little bit differently this year. So this month, what we're doing is taking concepts, terms, ideas that are out of this textbook, introduced in those first 4 chapters, and putting them in English, because Ernest Holmes, our founder, used some very specific terms that if you don't know what they mean can seem like you're speaking a foreign language. So we're going to take some of those terms, and several of them today, and reorient them so that they're actually in English, because what we want to do is understand them to the level that we then apply and practice them. So we're bringing that tradition into our time here together every Sunday in that way. Today we're also going to bring back a CLF tradition that I haven't done that much lately. It started when we were in our old building. I like to think of this campus as our new building. However, this year, in March, we will have been here 10 years. So I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't think about it as the new building anymore. Can you imagine? 2006. But nonetheless, when we were in our old building, a long time ago, in a room much smaller than this, we started a little tradition of something. So we're going to bring that back today, and you'll find out what that is. I will give you a little clue about it, however, and that it is completely irreverent and probably inappropriate in a church. Awesome! Because we're a little bit like that. Maybe I should say I'm a little bit like that, right? And you guys come along for the ride. All right, so a little tiny bit of backup before we move into today. Last Sunday, we introduced a new word, and that's another thing that I'm doing this month, is taking Ernest Holmes concepts, but also spicing it up a little bit by bringing in some new vocabulary. And last week, as we will do next week, we introduced a new word to ourselves, and that new word was what? Pronoia. Pronoia. So who here can give me the full and complete definition of pronoia? Anybody think they know it? Come on, don't be shy. It is the opposite of paranoia. You're right. I see a hand way back there. Yes. Very good. Very good. Very good. So it's a belief, and we put a word in front of belief. Oh, you cheated, Phil. You were here in first service. Right. It is a true belief that the universe is conspiring for your good. Okay, here's the tradition that I'm bringing back. All right, you are all the way in the back, which is really gonna. So come to the center, would you, if you don't mind? Are you ready? Here you go, baby. Oh, nice. Phil, come on, you get one, because even though you cheated, you were here in first service. It actually means you paid attention, and I love that part. So there you go. It's a bounce. There it is. All right. So yes, that's the irreverent, totally inappropriate for church thing that we do here, which is to toss chocolate for the correct answer. You'll have more. That's right. It pays to pay attention. You'll have more opportunities for this in a couple of moments. We also decided last week that we wanted to become proanoid, right? We wanted to live from a proanoid perspective. And I will not ask you to give me that definition, but I will give it to you here. We pulled it out of the Science of Mind textbook, out of the chapter called What It Does, and it's this: having faith in an infinite possibility and its desires and its ability to do for us all that we shall ever have need to have done. It is a faith in the infinite possibility and its desires and its ability to do for us all that we shall ever need to have done. That is being proanoid, and proanoia is the true belief that the universe is conspiring for our good. I'm hopeful, I'm desirous, I'm prayerful that you are living your life proanoid now. Today, we're going to explore 3 science of mind concepts. And they are included in the talk title, which is another long one. The first Sunday of the month was a really long talk title. Last Sunday was short because it was just proanoia. And now this one is longer because it's Ernest Holmes speak. And the title is this: Developing the Consciousness to See the Absolute and the Spiritual Truth in All Things. Developing the consciousness to see the absolute and the spiritual truth in all things. So there are 3 concepts in there that we're going to unpack and explore and put into English. And then after we do that, I'm going to give you 4 examples of how those can be alive in experiences. So the first one is consciousness, developing the consciousness. If you were here in August of this last year, hard for me to believe that it was actually August, but it was that long ago. In August of last year, we did a whole Sunday on consciousness, developing consciousness. So if you were here that Sunday, and if you have a good memory, there might be more of this for you. Righto? So we defined at that time consciousness as being the totality of our beingness that we bring to the table of our lives. So our consciousness is the totality of our beingness that we bring to the table of our lives. So our consciousness dictates how our life experience goes. Because as we know, wherever we are, we're attractive beings, and we call back into our experience wherever we are in consciousness. Now, in that Sunday service, I laid out a number of elements, a certain number of elements that all comprise to create our consciousness. Who can tell me how many? See, here's what just happened. Sandy just goes for it. She's like, it's 8. I know what it is. There you go. Jeannie. Oh, well, yeah, that's what they say back there. I don't know where it went. Oh, dear. Oh. Jeannie, I suspect, knew that number. Yes, you did. But you popped your hand up. There you go. Okay, now here's the big test. Who believes they could tell me what all 8 of them are? Oh, I can remember 4 right now. Who thinks they can? Sharon. All right, Sharon, let's hear them. Actions, attitudes, beliefs, feelings, words, thoughts, reactions. Whoa, rock on. All right. We're going to relay this back. Who'd like to receive it and then send it on back? Oh, you're going to do it. All right, thank you so much. We got to. Oh, she almost caught that on the bounce. All right. So, yes, our consciousness is comprised of 8 things, 8 elements: our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our values, our attitudes, our words, our actions, and then in that Sunday service, we added our reactions. That is what we want to develop. We want to develop our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our values, our attitudes to be in alignment with the absolute and with the spiritual truth of all things. So that takes us to the next word, the absolute. What is the absolute? Ernest Holmes uses that word a lot in our Science of Mind textbook. The absolute, just in itself, he also talks about absolute intelligence, absolute this, absolute that. But just standing on its own, who's up for one? Here we go. This is such an easy answer. What do you suppose the absolute is another word for? God. Sam, was that you? Oh, man. Somewhere. It's somewhere. It's there. Did you get it? You found it? All right. The absolute is simply another word for God. Holmes writes in the glossary of our textbook, as a definition to the absolute, it is the unconditioned, that which nothing can limit, that which forever transcends any conceivable limitation or determination, unconditioned perfection, self-existent, self-sufficient, often used as a synonym for God. If we look to a sister denomination, and that's Unity, and the co-founder of Unity was Charles Fillmore. In his book, The Revealing Word, which is a metaphysical dictionary and a great dictionary to have, he writes very similarly to Holmes and says, absolute is divine mind, unlimited principle, the Almighty One, the all-pervading Spirit, the infinite, the eternal, the supreme being, the one ultimate creative mind, the source of all things. You thought Holmes was wordy. Listen to this. That which is unconditioned, unlimited, unrestricted, and free from all limitations, the self-existent God. That's the absolute. So whenever you hear that word or read it in your textbook, and by the way, let me just do a quick survey. How many of you own the Science of Mind book, the one I have up here? We call, oh, look at all of you, rock on that you own it. Good job. So here's another question. How many of you, let's say in the last, 6 months, have read the 35 pages that are the introduction? Okay, much fewer hands. But I'm happy to see some. I would highly recommend that this month, you, during your spiritual practice time, during your prayer and meditation and your learning and your reading time, that you pull this book out, whatever version of it you have. There have been many editions, and they look different, but they're inside the same. Pull it out and read those first 4 chapters. And this conversation this month will make reading those first 4 chapters a little bit easier. And here's a hint, a quick hint. And again, for those of you who have been students, and one of you will know this answer. When you're reading, what's that? Too much pressure. All right. It's all right. It's all right. When you're reading the Science of Mind textbook, how can you tell if Ernest Holmes is using a synonym for God? It came from there. I don't know what it was. So in case you didn't hear that that cacophony of sound, it was that it's capitalized. At least that's what I think I heard you say. I hope that's what you said. Sure, that's what you said, of course. Ernest Holmes capitalizes the words. So the absolute is always capitalized. All in that those 2 definitions I read, a lot of those words were capitalized. That's how you can know he's talking about God. So our mission today is to develop our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our values, our attitudes, our words, our actions, and our reactions to see God and the spiritual truth in all things. This is a way to live, my friends. To do this is a way to live a more God-filled, God-centered, joyful, on-purpose life. So that takes us to the 3rd term, which is spiritual truth. What is spiritual truth? So now, you guys said too much pressure. I'm really going to put the pressure on, but not on you. You're off the hook. This pressure is to our spiritual life coaches. And Mary Jane, I'm looking there. Now, this is not fair because Mary Jane has been a spiritual life coach for a long time. And the question I'm going to ask is, it's in your exam that you took when you became a spiritual life coach, now 12, 13, 14, I don't know how many years ago. How long has it been? 16 years ago? Oh, my gracious me. So there's a phrase that Ernest Holmes uses in the textbook that talks to spiritual truth that we jokingly say when we're giving the review for this very important exam to become a spiritual life coach. We say, if you used this term for every single answer, it would be right. Although you can't use it every answer because, you got to do a little more than that. But it would be right. It's a term. It's 3 phrases. Boom, boom, and boom. Ernest uses it many, many times in the textbook. Anybody know what the heck I'm talking about? See, Joanne's a licensed practitioner as well, a spiritual life coach. And Pete? Being. That's close enough. You got it. There you go. Perfect man. Actually, it's perfect God is the first one. Perfect God, perfect man, meaning human, perfect being. That's the spiritual truth. The perfect God lives and moves and has its being as you. That's the spiritual truth. When Ernest Holmes speaks to spiritual truth, this is what we're talking about. So I want you to say, if you will, this. The perfection of God resides as me. Give that a shot.
The perfection of God resides as me.
One more time with gusto. The perfection of God resides as me. Now I want you to turn to somebody next to you and say, look them in the eye and say, the perfection of God resides in you. The thing is, the spiritual truth of this perfection of God isn't just limited to you and to me. It's everything. It's in everything. And so, look around this room, and say out loud, the perfection of God resides in everything I see.
The perfection of God resides in everything I see.
And I'm done. No, I'm not done. So let us take that even deeper. Because here's the deal. When we say the perfection of God resides in me or in you or in everything I see, we are implying in the grammar of that sentence and in the concept of that sentence that there are two different things. There is the perfection of God, and there is me. And that perfection of God, which is over here, separate from me, resides in me, right? That's actually not true. Oh, see? But we needed that to warm up. We needed to do that to warm up. The truth is, the perfection of God is you. That's the truth. The perfection of God is you. There is no separation. There is no separation. So here's what I'm inviting you to say now. The perfection of God is me. This is my spiritual truth. The perfection of God is me. This is my spiritual truth. Turn to someone. The perfection of God is you. This is your spiritual truth. Look around you and say, the perfection of God is everything I see. This is the spiritual truth. Everything I see, this is the spiritual truth. Today, we are developing our thoughts, feelings, beliefs, values, attitudes, words, actions, and reactions to see God and the perfection of God in ourselves, in others, and in everything we see. So even bringing these concepts, consciousness, absolute, spiritual truth, even bringing those three concepts into English, into understandable English, they're still fairly lofty ideas, right? They're lofty concepts. And as Ernest Holmes said, and I'm seriously going to paraphrase him right now. I'll give you the quote in a moment, but the paraphrasing of the quote is, if we don't take these ideas into practice, they don't do us any good at all. It's just interesting things to think about. He actually said, I'd rather see the student of these teachings practice and prove these ideas than speak all the words of wisdom that you can. That's more what he said. But what he meant was, it doesn't do you any good if all you do is speak them and think about them. You have to practice them. So I'm going to give you 4 examples, 4 stories that I believe absolutely speak to the practice of developing your consciousness to see the absolute and the spiritual truth in all things. See, now you know exactly what I mean, right? When I said that, right? You know what I mean, right? You got it? Yes. Okay. So 4 stories, all brief. Some supposed to be funny. We'll see. I know I don't have that innate humor that Lonnie has, but I work on it. You know, having lived with him for 24 years, a little bit of that has rubbed off on me. 25 years this year, as a matter of fact. For those of you who don't know, he's my husband. So yay, yes. Okay, so example number 1. Think about, I want you to be thinking about, I want you to use your brain a little bit here this morning. Think about, how does developing our consciousness to see the absolute and the spiritual truth of all things, how does that fit? How is that being applied by this example these 4 examples I'm going to give? The first one is a true story. David Sarnoff was an American businessman and a pioneer in the American radio and television world. For most of his career, he had various leadership roles in a company you might recognize its initials more than its name. Its name is the Radio Corporation of America. Bingo, RCA. We know that company, right? So he was a leader for decades in that company. In 1951, he went to the research team, and the story that I'm reading says he demanded, I love that, he demanded, just like Jesus demanded Lazarus to get up and walk. Jesus demanded things because he knew the power of the word. Okay, so he demanded that his research team develop a mechanical tape recorder that was both for black and white as well as this new thing called color television. A member of his research team was overheard to say these words: "It's a wonderful thing to have an imagination unhampered by the knowledge of facts." It's a wonderful thing to have an imagination unhampered by the knowledge of facts, meaning that can't be done. However, within 5 years, it had been done. So how does this apply to developing the consciousness to see the absolute and the spiritual truth of all things? Here's my take on that. I want you to have your own, but here's my take on that. God's perfection, the spiritual truth, manifests itself as infinite possibilities, right? God's perfection, spiritual truth, in me, in you, in David Sarnoff, in those researchers, manifests as imagination. When you bring God's perfection as possibilities, as imagination, the impossible becomes possible. That's how I see that one working there. Here's the second example from a Get Fuzzy cartoon. How many of you know Get Fuzzy? Don't you read the comics? Oh, I love the comics. They just like they're my little diversion at the end of the day. I read the comics and I work the crossword puzzle. That's my little human spiritual practice, right? I love that. So Get Fuzzy is a cartoon. I don't think it's in the paper anymore. It was for a long time, of a Rob, single guy who owns a cat and a dog, and they talk to each other. So Rob is the owner and Satchel is the dog. So this is a conversation between Rob and Satchel. Rob says to the dog, "Crud, I forgot I have to work next weekend." "Well, at least my boss won't be in. Every cloud has a silver lining, right?" And Satchel, the dog, says, "What does that mean?" Rob, "Well, it means like even in a bad situation, there's always some good that can come out of it." Satchel says, "Oh, well, it's like that old dog expression." Rob, like, "What dog expression?" "That old dog expression. For every trip to the vet, there's a ride in the car." Ernest Holmes says in our textbook, we should be able to look at a discordant fact in the face, meaning a trip to the vet. We should be able to look at that discordant fact in the face and deny its reality, since we know its seeming reality is borrowed from illusion. We should be able to look at a wrong condition, having to go to the vet, with the knowledge that we can change it. Now, here's the deal. We may not change the trip to the vet. We still may need to go to the vet. But when we change the way we look at it, when we bring a different consciousness to it, when we see God as part of it, then the experience changes, even though the fact of the trip to the vet may not change. Does that make sense? Our experience can be completely different depending on whether or not we have developed our consciousness to see God in everything. All right, that was story number 2. Story number 3, one of my favorites. It is an oldie but a goodie, so you probably have heard it, but here's the full version of it. There were twins, young boys, about 6 years old, who only resembled each other in their looks. Otherwise, they were exact opposites. One, if they thought it was too hot, the other one thought it was too cold. If one of them thought the TV was too loud, the other one said he couldn't hear it. One was an absolute doom and gloom pessimist. The other one was an eternal optimist. 1 year for their birthday, the father just decided to do an experiment. And he just wanted to see how his boys would react. So one of the boys, the gloom and doom pessimist, the father filled his room with every toy you could possibly imagine. Every new thing that was out, he filled his room with these toys. The son, that is the eternal optimist, he filled his room with horse manure. Wow. So, they both go into their rooms. The father first goes to the gloom and doom pessimist to just observe what's happening. And he walks in there, and here this kid is in the middle of all this stuff, and he's crying. He's crying, and the dad says, okay, why are you crying? He says, well, because, first of all my friends are going to be so jealous of all this, and nobody's going to like me or want to talk to me anymore. Second of all, look at all these instruction booklets I have to read to be able to play with this stuff. Oh, that's just so much to have to do. Secondly, I'm going to spend a fortune on batteries. Everything needs batteries. I'm going to go broke. My allowance won't cover all the batteries that I need. And finally, eventually, every one of these things is going to break, and I'm going to be so disappointed. That's, Dad, why I'm crying. That's okay. So with that, he walks into the room of the eternal optimist, whose room is filled with horse manure. And he sees his little boy absolutely jumping for joy. Wahoo! Yes! And his dad said, why are you so excited? And he says, because with all this in here, there has got to be a pony somewhere. We all know that one, right? I don't think that one needs any explanation at all as to why that one fits and works. Which takes me to my final and favorite one. And it is this. One day there was a woman, and she woke up and looked in the mirror and noticed that she only had 3 hairs on her head. She thought, I think I'll braid my hair today. And she went off and had a wonderful day. The next day, she woke up and noticed that she had only 2 hairs on her head and thought to herself, I think I will part my hair down the middle. She did and had a grand day. The next morning she woke up and looked in the mirror and saw that she had only 1 hair on her head. And she said, look at that, I'm going to wear my hair in a ponytail today. With that, she went out and had a fun day. The next day she woke up and she looked in the mirror, and lo and behold, not a hair on her head. And she said, yay, today I don't have to fix my hair. And that was her best day ever. We, my friends, can have our best day and days ever when we develop our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our values, our attitudes, our words, our actions, and our reactions to see God and the perfection of God in ourselves and in everything. When we do that, we will lead, as Thoreau once said, a life with a license of a higher order of being. We will absolutely experience our greatest yet to be. And that is my wish for all of you. Namaste. Yay. So let's anchor this in prayer. Living life with a license of a higher order of being. Experiencing our greatest yet to be. answering the call for something more. As Ernest Holmes said in the quote I started this service with, since the infinite expands eternally outward and eternally inward, and we are finite and therefore can't do that. We are constantly expanding, growing, expressing more. Knowing that that divine presence that is forever and ever expanding is also always perfect. So in its essence, in the essence of the absolute, in the essence of God, it is already all that it ever can be, will be, possibly could be, because it is perfection, it is infinite perfection. And in its expression, forever and ever expanding, and that is what you and I are. An expression of God, an expression of the absolute. That is our spiritual truth, and the spiritual truth of everything. So I proclaim and know here today for each and every one of us that as we develop our consciousness to see God in everything, to see God's perfection unfolding in everything, that we truly move to that higher place of experience, that higher place of joy, that higher place of love, that higher place of experiencing one another in this world, that higher place of listening to that call within, that deep voice of spirit within that is forever nudging us into uncharted territory. But because we have developed the consciousness to see God in everything and God's perfection in everything, we know that we are safe and that we are, as that beautiful first song said, led across that river perfectly. So I'm grateful for this. I call it good. And I know that these words now have activated a perfect law and are now unfolding in our lives in the absolute perfect way. So for this again, I say thank you, life. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, Source. And I release and I let go. I let go and know. I let go and trust. And together we say, and so it is. Amen.